Okay, hi guys. It's Miss Wood. I'm back again, and we're going to talk about our mapping a controversy essay this time. So I'm going to show you how to take your 3 research summaries and make them into your 1 mapping a controversy essay. So let me share my screen. Okay, we should be seeing my screen now. I'm going to put this outline and rubric into the Google Classroom so that you guys can use this as well. This is going to outline exactly what you need to do and how you're going to get to those 4 to 6 pages in your final essay. So on this first page, you're going to do a lot of really important work, and this is going to set up what your essay is going to do for the reader. So you're going to describe the positions, you're going to cite your sources, you're going to say what those viewpoints argument are, the viewpoints of the arguments of the viewpoints are, and then where they disagree and where they agree, and then you're going to kind of restate them. So that's going to be your introduction, and it's going to take 3/4 to a page and a quarter. Most of you guys, it's going to be about a page. Then you're going to have your 3 research summaries, and those are going to be about a page each. So there's your 4 pages right there. And then you've got your conclusion, which is going to be about another page. Now, for most of us, that's 5 pages. The works cited page is not included in your page count. So if you get 4 to 5 pages, you are golden. You're good. Now, remember, we're going to attribute statements to the original speakers according to as so-and-so states. We can use words like argues, advocates, asserts, contends, all of that kind of stuff. I also have the rubric here. We've gone over the rubric a little bit, but this will tell you exactly how each of those points breaks down, so you'll know exactly how your essay is going to be graded. Okay, so we've got this. I'm going to go loosely off of, not loosely, but I am going to go off of this, but I'm not going to really go back and forth. So I'm not going to reference this too much. What I am going to show you is my first mapping a controversy essay. This is my second one, and then my third one. And what I've done is started a new page, a new document for my mapping a controversy essay. Excuse me. Okay, so first thing we always do is make sure that our formatting is correct. So I've got Arial, this is 11 point. I want to make sure I'm at 12 point. When I'm looking at your essays, y'all, I'm seeing a lot of people using some funky fonts. So we want to make sure that we are Arial or Times New Roman. That's it. Nothing else. And we want to do 12-point font. Go over here and we're going to double space. Make sure on your page setup that we have 1-inch margins all around. We're good here. And then you're going to type your name, your teacher's name, your class, and then the date. Okay, now we don't have a title for this. We're just going to start writing. I'm going to skip down and do the works cited page and just kind of get it out of the way. What we're going to do is do center. And then I'm going to go back over here, and I've already done all the formatting and everything. So I'm just going to copy and paste them. That's what I wanted. All right, so I can already see I've got them out of order. And what else? I need to make sure that they are double spaced, so do that. Nice. And I need to go back and put the links in there. I'll do that. Oh, this one's got the link. Well, I'll fix that later. All right, so I've got my works cited page. Good. Now I'm going to go back, and what I'm going to do is just copy and paste all of my research summary in there. That's research summary 1. Here's research summary 2. I'm going to give a little space. And then here's research summary 3. Now, again, I can see my formatting is all funky, so I'm going to go ahead and fix it. I'm going to select all, make sure I'm at 12-point font on everybody, and I'm going to double space. Oh my gosh, how many pages? I haven't even done anything, and I'm already at 5 pages. Nice. Okay. So I know I needed my introduction, so I'm going to go back up here. And I need to introduce my controversy. I can't just plop my reader into the middle of all the drama. I need to introduce it. So for my example, I'm doing video game violence. So I need to introduce it as though my reader has never heard of this before. So remember, we're writing to an uninformed but interested audience. So I need to say something like the topic of whether or not video, games cause young people to be violent has been hotly debated for many years. Okay, now that's a good, it's a decent introduction sentence. Now, I'm going to talk about why is this important now? Why, if this has been something, a topic of debate, why am I talking about it right now? And so I'm talking about it in my essays in context of the government bringing it up. So many of the writers bring up the fact that Donald Trump brings it up as a cause of violence, and then also that our military uses it as a recruiting tool and as a training tool. And that would seem to indicate that it is at least useful in training people to be violent. So I think at least there's a question mark there. So now I need to say, why are people talking about it now? So in the media, President Donald Trump has often blamed video games for acts of violence such as mass shootings. Now, remember, this is a draft. It doesn't have to be perfect, so I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to keep going. Now, I've kind of got it in, and I'm going to start introducing the stakeholders here and what their arguments are. And so I need to say, I've got our journalist, Kevin Draper with the New York Times. I've got Kiza McDonald with The Guardian. And then I've got Nev Gordon, who's a professor of international law. Let's see. Journalists and international experts have weighed in on, y'all, spelling is not my topic, my forte. Considering the facts to try to answer the question. Do video games cause people to commit acts of mass violence? New York Times journalist. Now I'm going to introduce them one by one and briefly say what their argument is. So Kevin Draper argues that the scientific data is clear. Video games do not cause violence in young people. Whoops. And then I don't want Nev yet. I want McDonald. Keys and McDonald agrees. And McDonald actually goes a step further and says that blaming violence on video games is actually a distraction from what those real causes are. Something that Draper hints at in his article, Keys and McDonald says directly. Scientific. So she says, goes a step forward and claims that ignoring the scientific data that disproves the link between video games and aggression makes it more difficult to address the real causes of violence. On the other hand, Neve, I forgot what his name is already. Neve Gordon. And this one is an expert on international law, but they specialize in the ethics of violence. So Neve Gordon points out that the US military uses video games in recruitment and training of military soldiers. No, I'm going to take that word, military. And that it is effective in, again, I'm not going to try to overthink it, but in I'm just going to use training again, and I'm going to come back to that training efforts. Come back to that. I'm just trying to show you guys, I'm not trying to write a perfect paper. Okay, so I've introduced the topic, I've introduced the context and like why we're talking about it. I've introduced the stakeholders and kind of what their arguments are. Let's see what else I'm missing here. So let's see, now I need to go and say kind of what their most compelling arguments are. So kind of what are their best arguments here? So you're going to have to go in and reread these and refamiliarize yourself with these. To do that, I'm not going to go through this because I want to save some time, but you're going to write best arguments. And that's going to take you a few sentences. And then you're going to say, are there any points where they agree? And I know in my article, Neve Gordon actually addresses that there are studies that say that there are no link between video games and aggression, and has a rebuttal to that. And so I want to point that out, that he brings that up. So now I have my best arguments. I'm going to put a tab here. Now, you notice I have just kind of dropped my research summary 1 in here. What you will want to do is create a transition statement. We don't just want to have an abrupt shift from your introduction. So I have a relatively short introduction here. We might, like in our editing, bump it up a little bit, but getting started is the first step. So do a transition statement. We introduce our journalist. Remember, we tell you what their expertise is and all of that stuff. So you want to have a transition statement. We also don't want to have too much repetition. So here we have in the article, in the article. We do not want to do that too much. Nope, too much. Okay. And we want to have indentations here. Anytime you have a paragraph, we want to have an indentation. All right, so you get to the end of your page, and it looks like I'm on page 6. So this is the final one. We do not want to go past 6 pages, and I'm going to wrap up with my conclusion. And in our conclusion is where we are going to synthesize or put together all of their opinions and kind of make a whole conclusion. Why does this matter? Why is it important that we are talking about this controversy? So we can say something like, in examining this controversy, oh my gosh, one can see that, let's say, the tools of reconnecting. Most of America's youth. Tools of aggression. So what I mean is that many kids, teens play violent video games. And although video games don't directly cause people to go out and shoot and kill people, it can be used to that end. So just like having a knife, a kitchen knife, doesn't make you stab people, kitchen knife can be used for that. So how do we use that? The military is using that for a certain end. So if we think of video games in that way, how are we using video games? And what do we do with that? So now, if we think in terms of like stasis theory, you can start framing your conclusion that way. So now I'm starting to get to like a policy question. We've all agreed on that yes, violent video games exist. Yes, mass shootings exist. We're kind of agreeing that no violent video games do not cause mass shootings, but that, yes, this is kind of a problem. So now let's see, what do we want to do about it? Okay, in examining this controversy, one can see that the tools of aggression and violence are in the hands of most of America's youth, although the link between violence and video games has been thoroughly disproven. The fact remains that violent games can be used to, let's see, train aggressive people. And now I would want to say, like, put in a quote to support. And I think for this one, I would use from my opposition, because I think that's where the strongest support for that would be. And let's see, I might also want to say something about policy, like how the regulation, I know in my first article, Trump had already assembled a committee to regulate or like examine maybe possibly regulating video games, and that they just kind of stuck with the MPAA ratings about like, E for everybody or M for mature kind of stuff. So maybe revisiting that might be interesting. So maybe we could say something about that. As Draper mentioned in his article, another examination on policies toward regulating violence in video games could be a useful step. Words. Let's see, I'm gonna say something like calming public anxiety. I'll just use that, calming. On the issue. And then here I might want another quote. Or I could even like put another quote in here on this. And I'm just putting like little markers here for myself when I go back and do this. Because remember, this is our draft. And we're going to come back to this and kind of fix this. So on here, like to wrap it all up, like say I just want to put like a concluding sentence on here. I'm going to say these 3 articles exemplify the discussion surrounding the topic of video games and violence, while the mainstream media claims, or as I say, points the finger And this honestly, like now that I'm looking at it, might start veering into opinion. So I would want to go back and look at this or possibly pull a quote from the text. If I feel like this is too much of an opinion, I'm getting too much into bias here instead of staying neutral. But again, I'm going to go back and look at that. Hmm. Mm. Again, hypocrisy is definitely biased. I'm gonna have to go back and look at that. Unless he says so, and I don't recall that he does. Okay, well, I'm gonna stop there just because I don't want this to go on too long and I want you guys to be able to just see how what we did, just real briefly, real simply, was we took our 3 research summaries and we stuck an introduction and a conclusion on there. Now, we're not done, but we've got a draft. Okay? You've got a draft and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. Okay? And I want you to congratulate yourself on that because that is a major feat. It's a big deal, y'all. So I'm going to stop sharing. Maybe. Stop. Stop share. Here we go. Okay, so that's a big deal, you guys. So it's been a lot of work. You worked really hard. You did a lot of reading and a lot of writing to do those 3 research summaries. You put them all together. You've got your pages. You've got a draft of your mapping a controversy essay. Major milestone. So be proud of yourself. You did a great job. After you got your draft, we're going to do some revisions. Not a big deal, but we'll do some revisions, do some fine tuning, and then you'll be ready to turn it in at the end of the month. Okay. All right. Good job, everybody.